This machine is printing the walls of a home. Companies are pouring billions into this new tech, hoping it could help solve our housing shortage.
Houses that we need is anywhere from 3 to 6 million.
3D printers can cut building time in half. But one company estimates fewer than 100 were built in the US last year, out of 1.5 million total homes.
We run into problems basically every day. There is no perfect system on how to do this just yet.
So why hasn't 3D housing taken off? How does the cost compare to regular homes? And can this new tech help solve our housing crisis? A 3D home starts with a big trench for the foundation. Then workers prepare the concrete for the walls.
We're really focused on a easily, readily available mix so that you could go to your local Home Depot or a local quarry and pick up the materials you need to print.
That's Kristen Henry. She's the Chief Technology Officer at SQ4D, a company that built the first 3D home listed for sale in the US, in Long Island, New York.
The cost to build in Long Island is very high, and there is also a shortage of construction labor available.
The machine lays down foundation walls for 2 days. Metal wires add support. Once a final layer of concrete tops it off, the foundation is done. Now the walls of the actual house can go up.
Operating the printer on site is actually a lot less technologically challenging than people would think at first. It's actually almost like playing a video game.
Most of the job will be done by just 3 people. One person operates the printer, another controls the mix, and a third monitors the site.
Kind of acting as a chief safety officer.
That's also how 3D printing companies can save money. Typical houses need separate crews for the wood-framed walls, exterior siding, and drywall panels. 3D homes don't need those.
30 people to 3 people, that's a huge cost saving there.
Workers have to keep a sharp eye on the mixture, though. The texture changes with the temperature and humidity.
On really hot days, for example, the water evaporates really quickly and you need a little bit of a wetter mix in order to prevent the material from cracking. So it's kind of a delicate balance that you just have to make sure it's getting enough water, but you're not oversaturating it.
But if everything goes right, most of the house structure will be done in just 16 days, 3 times faster than one built from lumber and drywall. The printer can also help reduce waste.
You know exactly how much material you need at the start of the project. You don't need drywall as much. You don't need nailers or vapor barriers in the walls or sheathing or vinyl siding.
But you still need insulation, which is sprayed manually between the walls. The printer's job is done, but it takes 3 more weeks to get this home move-in ready.
You have to include electrical, plumbing, finishing, HVAC, flooring, cabinets, appliances, all of those things.
Plus a truss roof made of wood. The total cost to build this 1,400 square foot home was about $132,000. SQ4D says that's about 30% cheaper than a stick-built home, about the same size.
Traditional processes usually take 3 to 6 months. In 3D printing, you can do it in easily half that time.
The company has built 3 homes so far and is trying to make more by partnering with Habitat for Humanity. But Kristen says it's been difficult to scale up production because Long Island has strict building regulations that can slow down construction.
Building codes in every jurisdiction spell out very clearly, what is required for stick-built construction. There are no standards that are widespread of a 3D printed structure.
Saws and hammers, sweat and toil. They work from dawn to dusk.
America has been building homes the same way for over 100 years, mostly out of wood.
That was sort of the affordable way to build houses. Our industry sort of developed around that. Our supply chains, they're all built around wood construction of low-rise single-family houses.
Wood is a great insulator, but it's also susceptible to fires, weather damage, molds, and termites. Concrete is more resistant to all of those. It's gotten pricier in the US ever since 2012, but it's still less volatile than the price of lumber, which soared 300% in 2021. Concrete is already used in the US to make buildings like schools and hospitals. But usually, builders pour concrete into molds on site, shaping it as it hardens. Or pieces are pre-made in factories, safe from weather conditions, and then transported by trucks. 3D printing doesn't have these advantages, and basic concrete doesn't always work. So some companies have to tweak their recipes to fit different climates. The mixes often contain additives to make them stronger, and that can add to the cost.
The more specialized it is, that supply chain is more susceptible to disruption because there's only a few suppliers of it.
Alquist 3D, a startup in northern Colorado, has tested over a dozen mixes.
All of it is too expensive. All of it is hard to come by.
We filmed with them in 2023 when they were printing 10 homes in Muscatine, Iowa.
We do have sand and gravel, etc., and many, many additives, but we're not using a traditional cement mixture.
The mix needs small changes every day, depending on the temperature, winds, and humidity.
As you can see, it's a little gloopy. That means it's a little too cold. So we're warming it up, we're getting it ready. We're a couple minutes away from when it's going to be consistent, and that's when we'll actually start printing.
Even though crews are small, Zachary says finding people is hard.
There are few people on the planet that actually know how to do this. All of our crew, we've learned it on site, doing it ourselves, which is expensive and time-consuming.
Just a few days after we filmed here, Alquist demolished a partially built home. The mix wasn't strong enough to handle wear and tear.
The material itself does not have a long history yet. The way it acts during construction and the way it acts over a long time after it's built is still to be determined.
Alquist built 2 homes in 2023, but hasn't started any this year.
We've spent a lot of time over the last couple of months training our crew, honing the material, making sure that the robot is the right robot for the right purpose, and getting acclimated to the climate.
America has been trying to mass-produce homes for over a century. In 1909, you could order an entire home from a Sears catalog. The company pre-cut all the materials in a factory and usually shipped them by railcar. The home kits became a $90 million business, but they were discontinued in the 40s because of slumping sales. In the 70s, the US government spent millions promoting homes fully built in factories, also known as modular houses. Roughly 25,000 were built, but the movement didn't really catch on. Part of the problem was that it was expensive to build and operate the factories. Government aid dried up in the mid-70s, and a lot of the builders went under. Today, roughly 98% of houses are still assembled on site, mostly by hand. And it takes about a month longer to build a house today than it did in 1971.
There are more regulations today than there were in the 70s.
Material and labor shortages can also delay projects. 3D printing is supposed to help solve these problems. But Eric says for the trend to catch on, someone has to prove you can build lots of them fast while saving people money.
And is that difference big enough that the people who build their housing will take a risk to adopt a new technology?
Icon, a company in Austin, is trying to prove that's possible. It's printing 100 houses in Georgetown, Texas's Wolf Ranch community, making it the US's biggest neighborhood of 3D homes. Some of the investment came from one of the largest home builders in the country, Lennar.
If we want to get where we need to be with housing, we can't do what we've always done.
Icon has printed 95 homes here using its own custom concrete mix, and a dozen here have already sold. In February 2023, Icon's co-founder Jason Ballard estimated 3D homes could be up to 30% cheaper and faster to produce than conventional ones. But the company wouldn't tell us how much it's spent so far on Wolf Ranch.
It is scalable, less expensive, faster, and a stronger home than any of the homes that I've built in my past career.
While 3D printing can save money, some costs still have to come down, starting with the machines.
I do believe we need to keep bringing down the costs of the mixers themselves, as currently those are a pretty significant cost in addition to the machine.
Kristen hopes that as more homes are 3D printed, the public will get more comfortable with them.
As with any new technology, people are often pretty skeptical at first. Even if you think back to the first cars that were developed, it took quite some time for consumers to actually start to adopt it and want to be driving these vehicles all over the place. Really, the only complaint I've gotten so far is that too many people are coming to look at the houses, because since there's so few in the country, people are really excited about it and are knocking on front doors saying, hey, can I come see your house?
We spoke to a new owner of a 3D printed home built in Virginia by Alquist. Sierra Romas bought it through Habitat for Humanity's first-time homebuyer program.
Everything that you would think about that a house needs, it has, so no issues. Yeah, you can't punch holes through these walls, not at all. Some people have said, oh, I would never. That's just too different for me. How do you change the walls? How do you change the paint? You could easily put up drywall over the walls if you wanted to. But for the most part, I will not cover up my walls. I think it is like a major talking point. It starts great conversation. And for me, it's kind of like living inside art. And actually, we just recently had a terrible thunderstorm, and it was so quiet.